Welcome to Buzzing About Romance Happy Hour. I am Becky, and joining me for this episode is my co-host Heather. Hi, Heather.
Hello.
And I forgot to ask because we were chit-chatting before we started. But Sidney, is it Karger? Am I saying it right?
Karger.
Karger.
You got it.
Yes.
That's it.
We are joined by debut author Sidney Karger. And I have to tell you, Sidney, I have a Sidney, but she's an SYD. And I kept having to double check everything I put your name in because I just automatically put SYD.
It does that. I think computers do that too. SYD.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. Well, she was named after Sydney, Australia. So that's her gig. Do you go by Sid or is it full Sydney? Are you a Sid or a Sydney?
No, my entire family calls me Sydney, and my sort of adult friends call me Sid. And now, the book takes me back to my roots of Sydney, like my author name, Sydney. So yeah, but it's a mix. People, when they're mad at me, call me Sydney.
Yeah.
Your mom pulls out her mom voice with the middle name and everything. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. Junior, and I'm not even a junior.
Moms are good at that. I add like 7 different names to their names and confuse them. And I only have 2. It's confusing. So tonight we are celebrating the release of Best Men, which is your debut novel. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Yeah. It's exciting.
You're not new to writing because as I was digging into your bio and all these fun things, you write for TV.
Among other things, yes. Yeah, I've been writing forever since I was a kid, and but this is my first book. Well, sort of. I actually, when I was like 11 or 12, I tried writing a Choose Your Own Adventure book, and it was sort of like fan fiction in a way. It was like imitative of the Choose Your Own Adventure series, and it was like, if you want the princess to enter the castle, turn to page 12, and it was terrible. And yeah. But yeah, I made writing, I tried to write in any way possible career-wise, and I'd always wanted to write a book, and I kind of was doing screenwriting and movies and TV stuff, and then I got very involved in it that I was always kind of like, well, probably have to turn 75 by the time I get to my book. And now that I'm 75, here we are.
Here we are. Yeah. Looking great for 75.
I mean, you look really great for 75.
Thank you. Thank you.
So for those that are joining us, rules of the night, you can ask all the questions in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them. In the description of the video are the links to all the places to connect with Sidney. So make sure you like, follow, and subscribe. And at the end of the night, my girl child created, it's first day of Pride month. And we're going into our Pride celebration is this weekend. And she made book sleeves that are Pride themed.
I love those.
And so someone that sticks around to the end of the night will get to choose one for me to send to them. She is very excited for Pride. It is a big deal in our town. So, we'll see how this goes. We went last year. She's super excited. Okay, so we're going to kick things off in the traditional way that we do and ask you, Sidney, what are you drinking this evening? It's okay. Water's fine.
It's a fancy water. It's Perrier lime flavored.
Oh, very nice.
Fancy water. Look at that.
Normally I would have a drink with you guys, but I need to write tomorrow and have like a clear head. So
okay, that's fine. Heather, what are you drinking?
Well, I have to teach tomorrow, so I also am in the home stretch. I'm drinking Liftbridge. It's a local brewery, and it's just like black cherry soda.
Fun.
That sounds delicious.
I think they have that at Jungle Gems, and the next time I go, I'm going to buy some because they had all these small, like little soda microbrews, but we didn't grab any. And I'm just drinking a Blue Moon Light Sky because it was cold in the fridge, and I didn't want to get the ice out and make a cocktail. That's the kind of night I'm having. I've worked from the pool for the last 2 days. My job's so hard, you guys.
Wow.
Shut up.
Shut up.
It's 90 here. There's no air and 3,200 high schoolers. So keep telling me that you're...
I'm working on an edit, and I just did it floating in the pool today.
Nice.
Um, so
Living the dream.
it is. I mean, half the time I sit in my little office and I talk to no one. 3 months out of the summer, I get to sit in the pool and work, so it's fine.
I
Uh,
love that.
so, Sydney, let's get to know you a little bit. So, Best Men, which is available now, it's been out for about a month, and you guys can find this. It's on store shelves, but you can also get it off of your favorite online retailer. Um, why romance?
Good question. I didn't necessarily set out to write a romantic comedy. I usually start sort of with character, and for me, character turns into story. And I had this idea for this story, and it kind of was revolving around a wedding. And I was kind of like, okay, yeah, I guess this is a romantic comedy. But I realized sort of over the course of writing this and before and after that, I've always loved romantic comedy movies and huge rom-com fan. And it's sort of in my DNA of who I am. And as a writer, it's like the thing that I was, you kind of grow up loving certain movies and then you become an adult and you kind of change your perspective a little bit. But I'm always like, oh, those are really they always work. And I was recently watching, I saw You've Got Mail, and it was the kind
Classic.
of thing where it's like, I've seen it a few times and they're going to get together, but I'm just like rooting for them. And I'm like, oh, I hope they get together. And you don't know what's going to happen. And so for me, I love all the sort of obstacles that are put in place of two people trying to get together and trying to have a happy ending. And so, yeah, like Nora Ephron and, Nancy Myers, those are kind of like my
Yeah.
go-to goddesses. And so when I kind of had this idea, I was like, oh yeah, I love that kind of story. And then sort of right around the time I was thinking about it too, I feel like there's been a romantic comedy explosion a little bit with books, and I started reading more and subsequently have been getting into more. So it seems like it's, especially romantic comedies, seems like they're just sort of having like a renaissance in books right now.
I think that they are, and there's so many good
Hmm.
ones out there. And I was so excited to pick this one up because I think, one, I think romantic comedies are hard to write and hard to do well. And Best Men did such a great job balancing the comedy and, our hero Max, his journey, and then also this new romance. And you deal with some pretty big things about, the evolution of friendships and our roles changing in each other's lives. And it just really all worked together. So I was excited because, I mean, you know, rom coms are fun, and I'm a fool for an illustrated cover. Just give me a cover with cute pictures on it, and I buy it.
I love it. I love it too. Yeah.
My
I
husband's
think
always like, "How many more books do we need?" I don't know. Look, this one has a pretty cover.
And they're always pretty good. Like they're all really good. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think your humor was like not in your face. Like sometimes I think sometimes if people go in to try and write a romantic comedy, they just try too hard and like it just felt it read very effortlessly, I feel like.
Oh, good. That's good. I'll
Mhm.
take
it moved really fast too. So was that hard for you to pace out the story because it's kind of a longer book, but I felt that it moved it moved at a really great pace, but it wasn't too fast, and I don't think that we got too bogged down in details, and it's really hard to do as a debut author to get pacing.
Yeah. Well, I come from a screenwriting background mostly and working a lot with feature movie writing. And so I kind of, since I was in like high school and college, I've been sort of studying just screenwriting and really laboriously torturing myself over structure and getting that sort of foundation right. So I kind of feel like I was able to kind of apply all the, you kind of learn all the rules and then you throw them out and do what you kind of want, and but you still have that underlying sort of foundation. So I was kind of using that as my writing goalposts while I was writing the novel, and I feel like it helped. It really, because I knew where I needed to be, but at the same time, screenwriting versus writing novels it's two totally different muscles. But it felt like because I had those foundations and the goalposts and the structure, I was able to then kind of explored being more descriptive and getting inside the characters' heads, which you don't really necessarily get to do in screenwriting. So that was like completely liberating for me. I just loved that part of it. But so the pacing kind of, I relied heavily on what I knew from screenwriting a
From
little bit.
screenwriting. So did
Yeah.
you go into writing this book with like, are you a plotter or a pantser? And when you went in, did you just have big ideas or did you kind of know like these points are going to happen through this story?
I've become sort of a fake plotter, which is basically working with editors and publishing houses and agents and things like that. You kind of have to be an outliner, and I'm not like organically an outliner. I dare say I hate outlining. Like I'm not a big outliner, and I don't love it. And so, but working with people, you kind of have to prove here's what's going to happen, and then kind of get a little bit of a green light to go ahead and keep writing. And so I'm kind of like, yeah, this is totally going to happen. And I'm going to totally stick to this. And it's great. Don't worry about it. And so that's why I'm kind of like a fake outliner, because I know once you get into the writing of it, then things magically happen that you can't control. And usually it's better than the outline because it comes to life and it's elevated, and that's where all the fun sort of wordplay and dialogue things that you can't show off in an outline comes
Yeah.
from. So I'm sort of a in between a plotter and a pantser,
That's
but
fair.
by nature a pantser for sure.
I think it's probably more creative to pants.
Hmm.
I mean, do the characters talk to you? I know that's such a weird question. Are there voices in your head, Sid?
Well, I was just reading there was a writer who said, I forgot who it was, someone like sort of a thrillery spy writer, or I'm not sure what they are, but they said, they're a pantser, and you would think that they're some top writer, I'm forgetting who it was, but they don't know what's going to happen in the next scene, and because they don't know what's going to happen, then the reader is definitely not going to know what's happened. So I think that's a great
Yeah.
sort of rule to go by.
Yeah.
I think authors who say my characters just wrote their own book, like I'm just the vessel of like who wrote it. I think they're always my favorite authors because
Oh my God,
they're
yeah.
quirky. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
There's a scene in my book that there's this real life salad place in New York, and a friend of mine read it, and he said I feel judged because he used to go to that salad place because I was kind of like lovingly making fun of it,
Mhm.
and I'm like, oh, I didn't write that. It was the character and I'm just the vessel. So yeah.
Right.
I actually really love that scene because he's there, like he's gone there. Max, the main character, goes there a couple of times. And then like one time randomly the girl from the office is there and he's like, "When did you get here?" And she's like, a while ago."
I'm sitting here. Yeah.
That's
But it's
He's
true
a-
because when you kind of have those character traits sort of set in stone from the beginning, they do sort of like talk and, not necessarily inside my head, but they
it's
take
okay.
on their own life.
Mhm.
Some of
I
our
was
most favorite authors tell us, like, the voices are in my head and I have to get them out. Katie Robert,
Yeah.
and she keeps writing really great books. And so she's one that tells you, I have to keep writing. The characters won't shut up. Okay, friend.
Yeah.
you
Whatever
do
the
you.
therapy you need is good. I mean, Stephen King, I think, said too, it's like you're unearthing a fossil. And so it's like this thing exists. You're just like bringing it out
Yeah.
into the world that needs to be seen. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So do you have a favorite character type? I said hero type. These are some of our like standard questions that we ask. So like Max is kind of, I would classify him as what we call a stern brunch daddy. He's grouchy
Oh,
and mean on the inside or on the outside, but he has like a soft heart on the inside. Um, Heather just likes it when I say stern brunch daddy.
I like
I
that.
just feel like very protective of Max because I really liked him.
Yeah, but he's
Oh,
not quite a cinnamon roll hero because he's not
No.
all soft and squishy. He has his
yeah.
moments.
He's a little grumpy for sure. For sure.
Mhm.
Moody Max. Just
Moody
Like
Max. Yeah.
he's jaded but I just I don't know, I just really like fell in love with him.
But he's a softie. I mean, he has to overcome his last name, Moody, and I think that's sort of the character arc a little bit,
yeah,
which he does in his own way.
He
Right.
does.
But yeah, like I just like hero wise, it's like that sort of, I do love a grumpy character because they're funny and they tell it like it is and they're not afraid to be sarcastic, whatever it is. But I've been getting into sort of anti-heroes or heroines lately. Um,
Mhm.
You're speaking our
which
love language. You're,
is fun.
we love
Which
an
is fun.
anti-hero.
Yeah, it's like it's pretty. They could be juicy and mean and but also just like sometimes hysterical. Like they,
Mhm.
it can be very funny.
Yeah, we did a whole deep dive into mafia romance earlier
Mhm.
this year and went into our dark era of romance.
Mhm. Yeah.
Interesting.
And then we went from there, it just naturally progressed to our daddy era of romance. And we did a whole episode all about the daddies and how the daddies of romance compare to Pedro Pascal daddies.
Yes. What's
Whatever.
a good daddy romance that you recommend?
Um,
Oh,
okay, so I have a whole list. Do you
they're
want
going.
Okay, but do you want male male? Um would you like straight? What would you like?
I'm curious about both, actually.
Okay. So if you haven't read AJ Truman, Heather recommended him to me. He's an indie
Mhm.
author. He
So
has
good.
this great series. It's called The Barkeep and the Bro is the book that I really love. Like I'm slightly
Right.
obsessed. The um the one is his ex's dad and he owns the bar and the other hero works for the bar and
Mm.
he's a bit of a himbo. Like he's a golden retriever frat boy kind of guy. And
Okay.
so that's this taboo forbidden. It's pretty sexy.
I really
Wow.
like I like him. Max Walker has a really great
Oh,
Max Walker. He has like a romantic suspense. That's a Kyle Bauer too. Also has.
oh yeah,
I
Cal.
mean, seriously,
Seriously.
we could give you lots of book recs.
Straight
Love it.
daddies,
Yeah.
Zoe Blake. She's an indie
Mm.
author and she also writes Primal Kink, which super spicy. But so if you need consent, you might steer clear of
Right.
those. Uh,
Got it.
it's not an issue for us. We're
Yeah.
we're
I
those people.
think probably for me living in Minnesota, one of my favorite things was all the nods that you have to the Midwest. So I jumped in and didn't realize that you were from Chicago. I assumed based on everything, but clearly you love the Midwest. So that made me
Yes.
extremely.
Yeah.
Did you grow up
Yeah.
in Chicago then?
Yeah. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, the northern suburbs along Lake Michigan,
Mhm.
and but I've been living in New York, but I have like my entire family lives there, so I go there a few times a year and love it. And like, and there was nothing, I kind of channeled two of my personalities sort of with the two characters, one being, there's sort of polar opposites with Max being from where I'm from in the suburbs of Chicago, and then Jason being the super New Englandy, what I've learned over the years of living in New York. Um, so I thought I hadn't seen that, I hadn't read it, and it was sort of a fun thing to bring those two people together.
Yeah.
Their worlds together. But like how you describe like Paige and Max's like childhood is very reminiscent of probably what the suburbs are, right? Where you grew up.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's not exact. I don't like when I write, I try to kind of use the emotions that I've learned, but then apply it to like a different place or time or
Mhm.
character or scene or whatever it is. So it's a little bit of an amalgamation of what I grew up with. But I love a good sort of suburban story. And the beginning of it, I was actually playing with the idea of doing sort of a dual timeline, but then I was getting too far into the friendship between Max and Paige. But seeing them growing up, and then I'm like, I'm just trying to like go down memory lane where I grew up, so I probably shouldn't do that. But yeah, it's where they grew up in the story is similar of things where I grew up, but also things that I know about and not
Mhm.
necessarily the exact. And it's also like the wish fulfillment of what an ideal childhood would look like.
Sure.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But you do
Yeah.
kind of write a little bit of a love letter to New York. I love New York. I have a Broadway kid. She loves musicals, and theater is totally our jam. And so,
Yes.
like, it was this whole love letter to New York, which I love. Like,
Mhm.
if I could have moved there, you know, damn jobs, husband and children, I'd be in New York. Like, it's just one of those things that I love the city.
Yeah, I was writing it, probably a lot of writers you're meeting. I was writing it during the pandemic, and so I it was peak lockdown, and that's when I got into the bulk of the book writing, and it was complete wish fulfillment fantasy writing because I couldn't, no one could go anywhere. So I was like,
Mhm.
I want to go to my favorite Italian restaurant, and I'm, thinking about Broadway where I hadn't been in a year and a half or whatever it is, and now I'm gonna go spend 2 chapters in Fire Island and the Hamptons, being on a crowded train, which I never loved, but now I do because I'm stuck in lockdown. So it was a
Mhm.
lot of that, and I wanted to. I feel like also the more specific, that's sort of rule number one as a writer that I've learned is just like the more specific you get with emotion and place and even just words. It's like people, even if you haven't been to New York, you can fantasize that you've been there or relate it
Hmm.
to a place
Yeah.
you've been to in the middle of Oklahoma or wherever it is. Max goes to diners. And so it's like, what's your favorite diner where you live? I think it becomes relatable. I think the more sort of specific you get and universal. So
Yeah.
while I'm kind of name checking and referencing a lot of New York real places, hopefully, you can either love that because you've been to New York or think about your own favorite places from where you're from.
It was done
I
really
like
well.
feel terrible, but I didn't know Fire Island was a real place. I just like from the show, like that movie or what. I was like, it's a real place. Like I want to go there.
Did you know it was a real place after the movie, or?
No, not until your book. Right.
Oh my
See,
God.
I had no
I
idea.
I probably didn't. I think until like after college, I probably didn't think it was a real place either. Honestly, yeah.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I am in Minnesota, so it is a little bit of a jaunt for me to go there, but it sounds amazing. Except for apparently Paige and Chasten, they don't sleep or they don't have to function as adults.
Well,
And
and they're all, yeah.
you actually had a quote, and I was like, I've been thinking this. I'm so glad he wrote it. You wrote something like, "It's a school night. Why are we? Why are we out drinking again?" I was like, "Thank you. Why are we out drinking again?"
I know. And by the way, they're also like, early 30s, moving to New York, loving it. And I think when I was in college, I was weirdly obsessed with New York and wanted to, anyone I met from New York, I'd be like, talk to me, tell me about the city. What is it like? And, I weirdly was always kind of wanting to come here. But it all seemed like a fantasy land to me too. I didn't know what was real. I didn't know Fire Island. I didn't know any of these places.
Uh-huh.
Um, but when you come to New York, like I was also writing it and re-experiencing all the firsts that I had when I first moved to New York. Like staying out all night, bouncing back the next day and going to work, and it's your 9 to 5 job and all those things. So I've also kind of always been like an old soul, and I think Max is a bit of an old soul, even though he's
Mhm.
fairly young, and Paige and Chasen are just on another
Yeah.
level that he could never attain.
Well, when his New Balance, every time he talked about his New Balance, I was like, that was, I just thought that was so quirky and funny. And I can completely picture this Max, just in this office job that is sucking his soul.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, I mean, and it's also plays against just the stereotype of the sort of glamorous Sex in the
Hmm.
City New
Hmm.
Yorker I think everyone thinks of. And so he's a little bit of a fish out of water. In the beginning it's raining and he's literally like a fish out of water wearing his New Balances, and people
Hmm.
are in their dress shoes probably around him.
Right.
Hmm.
But I liked that. I think it just kept him like For me, it was keeping the character true to who that character was, like his
Hmm.
Midwestern upbringing, those kind of Midwestern values. And, um, because
Yeah.
that's something when you go to New York, like I wear tennis shoes, like, because I know I'm going to be walking a lot more than we walk where I live now. And then you see all these people like in fancy freaking dress shoes, and you're like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
totally a tourist. You pegged me. I'm an
I,
out of towner.
I think I'm forever a tourist in New York in a way. I've become a New Yorker like by living here, but I'm, at heart, I think I'll stick in my New Balances.
I was
Well, he said in one quote, like, they're gonna my gay card was taken by the gay police. I have so many. Every time I laughed, I had to highlight it. So
Oh, I love
lots of
that.
highlighting happening.
oh, Heather.
That's so cool.
You're so funny. But I was dying because, so funny story earlier this week, a friend, he lives in New York now, and he posted a picture. We went to high school together, and he was like really like styling dressed because for his job, he had to go to some big event or something. And somebody in his comments, another friend of his from New York, was like, "Who's your stylist now?" And I'm like, "What the hell?
Yeah.
Brent, you're from freaking Finley. We don't have stylists. Please stop this." Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah. Go back to your roots.
I'm like, and I mean,
Hmm.
he looked spectacular, but I'm just like, you have a stylist? And I wanted to be in those comments just making fun of him, but I'm like, I'll save it for the next time he comes home.
Yeah.
Because,
There was when I think like the first few years I was here, I think I went home and I think I didn't adapt a New York accent, but at one, I think I used a word it sounded sort of Brooklyny, like just by mistake. And my brother called me out on it. And he's like, cherry, you don't say cherry. It's like,
Whoops.
go back to your, and then also I've noticed too, going back to high school friends and seeing their Chicago accents are way over the top. And I was like, did I sound like that and lose it at some point? Or did I ever sound like that? I don't know.
It is very funny that I think Chicago, I mean, me shouldn't talk, but you can tell when people are from Chicago.
you mean
They
super
definitely
duper
have
there,
more.
Heather?
You betcha.
Yeah, you bet, right?
You
Oh my
betcha.
gosh.
That's more
I
Fargo.
can pull out the
No,
Minnesota one, don't worry.
it's Heather. Like, she says stuff, and we sit over here and we giggle because, I mean, I live in Northwest Ohio. I'm not far from Toledo or Detroit. And growing up, I had cousins in the South, and they'd be like, "Oh, you talk funny," and I'm like, "I talk like the people on TV. You talk funny, not me."
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Well,
Yes.
that's what I realized getting together with my high school friends. It's not that I lost it. I don't think I ever there's like a group of us who never had it. And then there's some people who are just born with it.
Mhm.
And the long vowels and the let's meet at Starbucks and.
You got that. You can do Chicago. You're good to go.
Yeah.
So Paige and Max, like, is Paige someone, or did you just create her? Like,
Again, she's sort of maybe an amalgamation of
mhm.
friends and people I've met and people I've heard about and an imagination. Like it's probably a percentage of each of that. But of course, just with the debut novel, I've been getting friends who will I'm on page 204 and this is me, right? That's you wrote this is me. That's my character. I'm
That's so
like,
funny.
yeah, no, it's like, and then there's certain things that like I just coming from like a lot of my friends, like everyone has inside jokes with their friends and
right.
doing comedy bits through the years and like characters we've created over the years that like there's a character who Max works with who's always cold. And it's like, that's like a character trope that we've been talking about since high school. Like the girl who's always cold and but in real life, I did work with someone who was always cold and everyone thinks it's her and it's kind of not her, but it is
But
her.
everyone has somebody that they work with that has a blanket on them, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So,
The
but
person that
just to
wears
get
the
back to your
sweater in
question,
July, and you're like, what?
always cold. But
Right.
it's so good. Paige she's parts of people I know, and then, but it's again like any. sort of writer. There's parts of her that are me, um, and then parts that I wish I could be too. I mean, just like her sort of Broadway dreams
Mhm.
and coming true, writing for, Steve Martin on Broadway is kind
Right.
of a cool thing to
Yeah.
happen to her. And
Yeah.
but yeah, and then, and I also kind of wanted to use her character as, you sort of, in a rom-com, you would sort of read about her and she would be the main character. And so I wanted to kind of flip that a little bit on its head, where it's like the sidekick,
Mhm.
gay best friend, is actually
Yeah.
the hero
Yeah.
and the star of the story, and she's the sidekick. So yeah.
Yeah. And
That is great.
I loved her, and
Mhm.
you really do create this deep connection friendship between her and
Mhm.
Max. Like I felt their friendship, but I also liked that she isn't perfect. She, because no one is perfect. And sometimes we get a side character and we're all a little like, okay, they're a little too good to be true. Like you're too good of a friend because nobody's
Yeah.
that good of a friend. And so you gave her some humanity and I appreciated that. Um,
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
because,
Yeah.
she gets kind of sucked into about herself and, her wedding and I'm a terrible friend. I'm not great at calling and keeping contact. I need someone to pull me out of my life and say, "Hey, look, we're over here. Call us." And I liked that about her. I like that you gave her humanity. Did you mean to do that?
For sure. Yeah, I'm glad you like that. I didn't, because she's sort of like the impetus of like, here's the character that would normally have be this sort of hero of this rom-com. I wanted to make sure she wasn't just a device, and getting, sort of the inciting incident of Max being asked into her wedding. I wanted to make sure she had like a full character arc. So, and it also is just the idea of like, I feel like, I don't know, for me and my friends, like getting into your 30s was sort of pivotal, and you kind of shed your 20-ish way. Maybe, now it's different, but
Mhm.
like you shed your 20s and you become more of an adult, and you're adulting more. And so like a lot of the things that she knew, and her perspective on Max as a kid, kind of have carried over, and this is the story that reveals those things. And she sees him as the gay best friend, and that's not how he is, and he doesn't want to be seen that way, and that's one of her faults. And she can't necessarily decide on what to order at lunch and dinner. And like, that was inspired a little bit by just the reverse Meg Ryan, and When Harry Met Sally. She knew exactly what she wanted, and this was like the opposite, of where she had no idea what she wants.
So I live with someone that's like Paige. My husband literally cannot make a decision. There was some scene, and I read it out loud to my husband, and he goes, "Oh my God, that's me." I'm like, I know how she goes like full circle. I'm like, oh, we're 25 minutes from a decision. I think one time he was like, "Oh, that's cute." He thought her decision was made or something, and I was like, "Yes."
That's
And the
funny.
thing is that was a character trait that you did not just talk about one time. This was multiple times it came up with lots of evidence around how Paige cannot make a decision.
Yeah, and then Max is sort of the put upon character, who
Mhm.
like everyone's sort of on board with her not making a decision, all the servers, and he's the one who's like, is anyone seeing this? Like, why?
Yeah.
How is this allowed?
Nope.
Yeah, and like the waitress brings him the wrong drink and he just kind of goes with it because Paige would not have gone with that, and he's like, well, I guess I'm drinking this kind of beer now because I'm not arguing with this waitress.
Yeah, I'm not going to go through this for another 25 minutes. So yeah.
Mhm.
And then just the idea of her choosing, she kind of went through her 20s not being able to choose, or dating around, being sort of
Mhm.
a serial dater, which is fine. And like, her choosing a food item was sort of the way she was choosing guys. And then when it's time for her to get married, Max is like, what? I'm the one who knows what I want.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
you're not supposed to know that. So he
Right.
spins on himself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So there's lots of wedding planning in this book, but there's also kind of a sense of competition that comes up around the wedding planning. Do you have real life experience in this? I feel like maybe you had a best friend or a sister or somebody that like planning the wedding was a little bit competitive.
Not necessarily. I've never had that specific thing, but I did have my best childhood friend asked me to be the man of honor in her wedding, and I loved the idea, and I said yes. And but she had this sort of very strict wedding planner, and the wedding planner did not want to have one guy in the all-female wedding party, and so I was demoted to an usher. And I think I don't even really know what I did. I think I like handed out two flyers, and people were like, okay, like programs, and then I sat down, and so I wasn't the man of honor. So I was bummed, and it's something we laugh about today, and tragedy plus time equals comedy. So I was like, I always thought that was a great sort of idea for a story and a character, and again, wish fulfillment of like, what if a character had actually become a man of honor, and what would his wedding duties consist of? And then it was sort of that, what's the polar opposite version of that? And if you're talking about sort of the stereotypes of gay guys, sometimes which are great and fine and everything, who's the character that can go against the grain of like, he would have absolutely no idea how to
Right.
pick a flower arrangement or anything creative really that
Right.
goes along with that. So that was more of my sad wedding story plus this character. It was the
That's
impetus.
okay. Amanda's in the comments. She's upset for you that you got demoted.
Oh,
Like, we all want to fire this wedding planner. Like,
I like want to beat this wedding planner up. Like what?
that was my first thought. Like, come on, bitch, we're going toe to toe here. Let's go.
well, and also I'm like, to my friend, I'm like, why did you go along with it? Like, and she's like, I don't know. I was just in the heat of the moment and was doing whatever, she didn't have time to sort of manage that part of it. But weirdly, I was at my cousin's wedding like a year later, and the wedding planner was there, and I was like, you demoted me.
Yeah.
I didn't confront her, of course, but
You should.
Amanda's like, that's so mean. That is mean. Well, you have all of us on your side. We're like, we'll beat her up for you.
maybe we should have like renewal of the vows
Yeah.
when we
Oh my
get a second
gosh.
chance.
I did laugh. My husband's best friend is gay, and he is totally like Max, where he is like, he can't, I mean, he would wear the most ridiculous combination of anything. And I'm like, hey, Trent, what are you wearing? He's like, I don't care. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, and when you said I'm taking the gay card, I was like, Trent, we're gonna take that away from you. And he's like, I don't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't get
Well, I
that
mean,
gene.
So I bought a
yeah,
copy for Sydney, my Sydney's, her gunkles. I bought a copy of the book for them because I'm like, this is you guys. Like, one is super dapper, very, snazzy, leans into it, and the other is like Pokemon and, socks and sandals. So,
I love that.
And New Balances.
and New Balances.
There's something for everyone.
Max reminds me of like a suburban dad who would wear his like, his pull up his socks and his trusty khakis and like carrying his little plants around. Like,
100%. And then but that was the thing, sort of like historically, just seeing gay characters in TV shows and movies and things like that. Like, we've only seen the dapper, sort of overly dressed characters, and so I kind of was responding to that a little bit. I'm like, there are so many shades of gay that it's like, I want to see a character I haven't really read about or seen before, and give him all these really specific quirks. So I'm glad you guys are responding to that.
I really loved it. Max was kind of in a little bit of, I don't want to say it was a midlife crisis because he's just like 35. But he is
Yeah.
kind of questioning like what he's doing, what his role is. And that was so relatable. So I'm in my late 40s, but I do remember like that mid 30s, it was really hard. It felt hard. Like, what am I now? I had little kids at the time because I didn't have my kids till I was 30, but I was like, I remember feeling like 35, I should have had my stuff together. Like, I should know what I'm doing and career trajectory on board and all of that. And it was so relatable.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad. Because for some reason, like turning 21, whatever, like it was turning 30. I was like, what is going on? This can't be happening. I had that quarter life crisis a little bit. And so I was like, okay, what is a character, um, if he's past that and then about to have that other milestone of turning 35, which we put dumb milestones on these, numbers, he's kind of past that 30 mark. So now he's really freaking out. And he needs to sort of, for himself, figure things out a little bit, what he wants to do. And so it became really pivotal for that character. Yeah. Which I'm glad you found relatable.
I found it super relatable. I don't know what that says about me and Max.
I feel like he was comparing himself to everyone, and I was like, no, we don't have to do that. You're already so great. Especially with like where I don't want to say his name, Chasten, right? Chasten was at in his career, and then obviously his douchey ex was, somewhere else.
That opening scene with the douchey ex.
Oh my god,
I was like,
the worst.
No, thank you, sir. No. And I wanted to text Max and be like, you can do better. Do better, buddy.
Well, he was, that's another, that was sort of a little bit of a theme. Whoa, what was your note?
I said, Greg. First, he's a foot doctor. 2, he's selfish in bed. Hard pass, Max. Hard pass.
Yeah. I wish we could somehow get a hold of Max.
Right? We've got all this great like mom advice for him right here.
But that was kind of the themes of what I was a little bit going for, is sort of like the perception of the past. It's like when Max and Greg meet, Greg is kind of nerdy and this ginger, nerd in the corner who's like standing in his hospital scrubs or whatever. And like, then he transforms into something else. And so you're shedding your past and what you he was great at one point, I promise. But a little bit, but he was then transformed into a monster. So that's why Max had to lose him.
But you did also write something. I kind of liked this quote. You had said something that you have souvenirs from each relationship. So he wasn't all negative about Greg. There were things that he picked up that he enjoyed about his life that they experienced.
Yeah, it's like anybody with their first love. It's sort of like, if you meet them now, you're like, what was I thinking? Who is this person? What have they become? Not necessarily, hopefully, but that was the character's thing. So he does have these good qualities of like espresso and that he picked up along the way through, he taught him also these little things that you learn to become an adult, but then he just not good in the end.
That's a really great quote, Heather. How much of the book did you highlight?
Well, this is also my very Minnesotan. I was at the cabin, so I sat out on the porch and read and wrote, and it was a very enjoyable weekend.
Perfect weekend. Okay, Sidney, so we have Best Men that is out now. It is available wherever you guys get books. You can go to all your retailers and find it. What is next for you?
So next, I'm in the middle of my edits on the next book, which is a romantic comedy, another one. And I think it's coming out in a year from now, hopefully, if I can get it done in time. And it's about a gay couple who are kind of going through some things, going through a little bit of trouble. They live in Brooklyn, and they decide to go on a road trip from New York to California. And in California, they are about a month out from the birth of their first baby via surrogacy.
Okay.
So it's sort of a road trip comedy where they kind of think it's sort of a baby moon road trip, but also therapeutic, working out their issues, and they stop along the way and they got to figure it out.
I love a road trip.
Mm-hmm.
I love a road trip.
Nice.
But you teased it in this book.
Yeah.
And it was great. I was like, when is this coming?
Okay.
Okay, so if you are still here hanging out and following along, say hey in the chat, and I will pick someone to win one of these Pride-themed book sleeves. Okay, so while we wait for people to say hey, I'm going to ask you some would you rather, Sydney, so we can kind of get to know you a little bit.
Right.
Would you rather have to read aloud every word you read or sing everything you say out loud?
Probably the first one.
Have to read every word aloud?
Yeah.
Although, don't like, maybe it's because I'm a theater kid. Like, I worked in theater for a lot of years. I want my life to be a musical. I want someone to break out into song and dance in a dance number, like while I do dishes, and then the dishes are done at the end of the number. Like,
Magically.
who doesn't want that?
I am right there with you, but something when I karaoke, I will sing like one song and lose my voice.
Oh,
And so I wouldn't be able to do it.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I don't sing. I sound like a bullfrog in heat, so it's fine.
I do like to sing, but
um, would you rather be forced to dance every time you heard music, or be forced to sing along to any song you heard?
um, probably sing along. Again, I'd probably lose my voice, but I'd sing along.
Heather?
I don't I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know. I'm not a sing. I can't sing.
Yeah, I feel that. Would you rather have a flying carpet or a car that can drive underwater?
Oh, a flying carpet for sure.
Flying carpet, right? The
Yeah,
the breeze blowing in your hair, and yeah, totally into that one.
I've
Also,
wanted that forever.
would you rather be forced to eat only spicy food or only incredibly bland food?
Oh God. Well,
I was
boy,
gonna say you're from
I
Chicago.
like
You're from Chicago, so it's like Midwest taste buds, like spices,
Hmm.
give me a well done hamburger with yeah. Like, I think the spicy. I love a spicy food, but give me the bland forever.
give you the bland
Hmm.
forever. Would you rather never be able to wear pants or never be able to wear shorts?
Pants.
Pants. I would give up pants in a heartbeat. I didn't even need shorts. I mean, really.
There's a good Tina Fey quote, or I can't quote it, but she says something about when you become an adult and you come home, like the first thing you want to do is just get rid of the pants.
Yeah. We keep telling our children
That's
because
right.
they're leaving to go to college. Both will be at college in the fall, and we're like, "Don't come home. It's going to be no pants Sundays in our house, so don't come home. Just Dad and I. I mean, and my mother lives in her apartment, but no pants on Sundays." Um,
That's amazing.
right? Life goals. Life goals. Would you rather be lost in a bad part of town or lost in the forest?
Oh, forest for sure. And not because I'd be afraid of a bad part of town, but I would rather be surrounded by nature.
So, Midwest, and this is not one of my would you rathers, but I'm curious because I live in Northwest Ohio now, but I actually was born in Philly and my mom is from the South. So, we call it soda in our house. Like, we drink soda, but you're from
Yeah,
Chicago. So, do you drink pop or do you drink soda?
we drink Coke.
You drink Coke.
Like it's Coke and then pop, and soda is not a thing unless like I guess this would be soda
Yeah,
because it's like clear, but like pop.
pop. Because New
What
York
about
is
Heather?
a soda city, right? Doesn't most New York say soda? New
Yeah,
Yorkers
for
say
sure.
soda because it's a
I
New England thing, Northeast.
definitely. I refuse to say soda. Sorry.
So it's fine. Um,
It's pop.
my
What
husband,
about Heather?
It's pop. I
Yeah.
mean, from Minnesota. Just like so Sarah Nye, I don't know if you've ever read. She is from Wisconsin. She lives in Milwaukee and she just released a book, I think last week. And it's a college romance, and they were talking about the bubbler. And I like messaged her the night before release and I was like, did you just cruise right by the fact that you called this a bubbler? And she's like, I did. I'm like, is anyone going to know what that is? I mean, you do probably because you lived in Chicago.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, in Wisconsin, they call a drinking fountain a bubbler.
Oh, okay. That
really,
sounds vaguely familiar, but I didn't know that.
Isn't that weird?
I,
I know.
I
My
had no
husband's from
idea.
Wisconsin.
Oh,
I might have to steal that for something.
Yeah, you should.
I did not know that was a thing.
But it's
Uh-huh.
also, it's not pop in where I'm from, it's pop.
Pap.
Pop,
That is what
pop.
that is.
Mhm.
Pop.
My husband is from Cleveland, and when we first started dating, he said pop, and his whole family said pop, and he'd be like, "Could you get me a pop?" And I'm like, "I will pop you, but I will happily get you a soda." And so 24 years of marriage and many, many years of relationship, he does say soda now, so he's safe. He doesn't get,
In
abused.
trouble.
We're saying
Did
pop.
you know that like Coke was the catch-all for every kind of, even if it's Sprite, like it's Coke?
Yeah, well, my mom is from, like I said, my mom's from the South, and so everything, like Atlanta, everything is Coke. And you'll be like, "So what do you have?" And they'll be like, "Coke." And then you'll
Yeah.
say, "Okay, I'll have a Diet Coke. So you want a Diet Pepsi?" You just told me it was Coke.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do know that Coke is, like kind of the catch-all for fizzy carbonated flavored soda with sugar. I don't know.
I started to say fizzy, actually. It's kind of a fun word to say anyway. Give me the fizzy one.
Mhm.
Well, we drink like flavored waters in our house, and if you ask I have some neurospicy people in my house, so we call the flavored waters the fizzy water. Can you get me a fizzy water so that
Yeah.
they know which one I'm talking
Uh,
about?
Carbonated doesn't sound appealing.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Mm-mm.
Um, okay, so pick a number. We've only got 3 in the chat. Pick a number between 1 and 3. Said
Two.
2. Amanda, email me which one you want. I can send you pictures, and then I'll get that out to you with your swag pack this month. Congratulations, Sidney, on your debut novel, Best Men. I'm so excited
Thank
for
you.
you. And I'm excited to
Thank
see
you.
what's next, too, for you.
Thanks. Me too. Thanks for having me on.
Of
Super
course.
fun. I did a deep dive, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Reach out anytime. We'd be happy to have you back.
Mhm.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I am off next week, but I'll be back on June 15th with author Britt Benson for another happy hour. Until next time, everyone, happy reading.